I'm going to apologize if you hear my dog in the background. He's got a bone that he's really been working hard on, so you might hear him a little bit. So I apologize, but I'm excited to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, which is really exciting. I teach in the UAF Sport and Recreation Business Program in a corporate partnership, sponsorship, revenue generation type material. And I went to Ohio University for my grad program. And I got my graduate degree in sports business. And up until about maybe a month ago, I lose track at this point, but I was with the Dallas Cowboys for 4 seasons in corporate partnerships. And I recently took a role as a senior director of corporate partnership sales and marketing to launch the newest National Women's Soccer League franchise in San Diego. And that is San Diego Way Football Club. So I'm pretty excited about it. And I'm excited to share a little bit with you the process of, evaluating opportunities and knowing when the right time to move on is, and a little bit about why I took the role. So I'm looking forward to it.
Michelle, too, I know you breezed over your professional background and just said the Cowboys. So can you tell us where you were before that and kind of how you got into the sports industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we back up all the way a little bit to my undergrad, I was a student athlete and I loved playing soccer, lacrosse in college. And there was a part of me that really wanted to be in college athletics. I was like, I want to be a Division III athletic director, and I did a little bit of that, went to grad school for higher education administration, also was on staff for women's soccer there at Stony Brook University. And, I just really wasn't getting the opportunities I wanted. I wasn't going to get the looks I wanted for jobs. So then I went back to school again. And that's when I was at Ohio University for my master's in sports business. And I still wanted to be an athletic director at that point. And I remember going down to visit, it was Richard Childress Racing in North Carolina. It was like a field trip. And that was when I first learned about sponsorship. Otherwise, I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it. I didn't really care to know about it. I never wanted to work in professional sports. And and here I am working in professional sports, but I never really thought about it, never wanted to do it. And that's when I was introduced to sponsorship and just the how integral it is to an organization's success, the relationship building that goes into it, the creativity, the strategy, and it was really exciting to me. So I was like, yeah, maybe I could do this. Maybe this is something that I'd want to do. And I'll never forget one of my professors, even my first 2 weeks at the grad program, he goes, you're not going to go into college athletics. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I am. This is what I've wanted to do for years. And he goes, you're going to go into sponsorships. I'm like, all right, we'll see. I don't want to work in pro sports. So he was right, obviously. So after grad school, I got a job at Chip Ganassi Racing. Actually, they just sold their NASCAR operation off after 20 years. And my biggest learning with Chip Ganassi Racing is to never pigeonhole yourself into one avenue, right? So I grew up on Long Island in New York, never seen a NASCAR race in my life, knew who Jeff Gordon was. That was about the extent of my knowledge. But I met the director of marketing at Chip Ganassi Racing, and he goes, just come down for an interview. Just talk to us, see what you think. And I was like, okay. At first I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to work in NASCAR. But I took the interview and it was so much more strategic than I expected. And I was a little blown away. And, I ended up working there for 3 years and it was amazing. It was something really foundationally sound about that. And I'm just really glad that I got the guidance to not turn an opportunity away right away, just because it wasn't within what I thought was my wheelhouse. And then from there, my career is the perfect example of the importance of your network. Because I got a call about an open job at the Cowboys, and I keep finding myself in these scenarios where I'm like, I don't want to work for the Cowboys. And I know that sounds crazy, but let me tell you why. I worked for a small team at Ganassi and I loved it. And I loved how dependent our business was on sponsorship, right? In racing, your only form of revenue is sponsorships. At other teams, you have gate revenue, at the stadium, you have TV dollars, you have a revenue share model, but our biggest and almost only form of revenue is sponsorship. So I loved the pressure and I loved the challenge of it. So my thought was, the Cowboys, like, they probably don't care about sponsorship. It's probably just like pennies that they find in the couch cushion. But if you've ever seen Moneyball, you remember the time where he took the interview in Boston, even though he didn't think he was going to take the job. He didn't take the job, right? So I was like, this might be my Moneyball moment. Like, I need to go take the interview because it's the Cowboys, right? So I went without any intention on taking the job if they were going to offer it to me. But I'm so glad I went, because immediately the myths about the Cowboys were debunked, right? They operate like a small team. Their team there was absolutely amazing. They care about sponsorship. Mr. Jones cares about sponsorship. He invented sponsorship. So yeah, he cares about it. And it was an opportunity to learn from, some of the most intelligent business people in sports. And I remember leaving that interview. I went in thinking, there's no way I'm going to take this job. I left thinking, man, if they offer this to me, I'm going to take this job. And luckily they did. And I was there for 4 seasons. And, I was really, really fortunate to work for a great team, great ownership, great leadership, below that. And then this opportunity came up. And now I work in women's soccer, which is quite the transition from the most valued franchise in sports to a startup women's soccer franchise.
And we're going to jump back to that in a second. So going back to, and we talked about what, kind of what led you into corporate partnership, but what specifically made you choose or kind of shift your path? Because I look at like having served as an interim AD and also worked in minor league sports. They're so different. Like what was that shift that made you go from, I don't want college athletics and Chip Ganassi racing is it, and partnership in particular?
Yeah. I always loved being able to get really creative to problem solve. And not that you can't do that in college athletics, because people do it every day, especially with all the NIL stuff now. It's going to require a lot of creative problem solving. But I also loved, I had a newfound love of generating revenue. And I don't know if I knew how much I loved it, putting together some creative problem solve for an issue that a business was facing, but was going to use our platform to solve it. It just seemed really cool to me. So besides the creativity for problem solving, the relationship building that you get to take on with, high level brands and C-level executives, and then the ability to generate revenue for your business, right? And then guide your business as a whole as a property. So like, for instance, my goal is to be a chief revenue officer, or president of a women's sports team. And that's because you oversee all the revenue generation, you creatively problem solve in multiple ways. But you also get to move your property forward as a business. And I never really thought of pro sports as a business until, I got to grad school, because I didn't know any better. I just thought, I don't want to do ticket sales, which is silly. If you went to our last session with Aaron from Seattle, ticket sales is a great foot in the door into sports as a business. But I think really just having an appreciation for that just got me really excited. And it was something that, I didn't mind working hours on a deck, for a pitch, but as long as it was telling a story, using data and analytics, and then putting something in front of somebody where they can't say no and it makes sense, that's where I get my energy from.
That's awesome. And that's a good lead into specifically your, sponsorship at an established brand and one of the biggest sport properties in the world with Cowboys, and then going to a new league, a new team that many people probably haven't even heard about yet. Like, talk to us about what made you leave the positions for the Cowboys for your new position at the NWSL. And I know you named the team and stuff recently too. So
Yeah. So we announced our team name last week. It's San Diego Wave FC. So really endemic to just the city that we are privileged to represent. So that's exciting. But I won't lie to you, it's a hard decision. It's hard to leave the Cowboys for a lot of reasons, right? The people are amazing. Working for one of arguably the biggest global sports brands, amazing. The Star does a decent amount of talking for you, right? It wasn't easy by any means, but the Star definitely didn't hurt because everyone knows the Star. So it's quite the other end of the spectrum going to, again, to launch a brand new franchise in the National Women's Soccer League, which maybe a lot of you on here haven't even heard of, right? So just to tell you a little bit about it, it's been in function for 10 years. There have been 2, I believe, women's soccer professional leagues that have folded before that. This one is not that. This is so primed for success, and it's in a very exciting time in women's sports. And that's a little bit of what piqued my interest in it. One, I played soccer in college. I love it. But I was never like, oh, I need to work in soccer. The other part about it is the people and the opportunity. So the opportunity in women's sports right now is like buying Bitcoin when it was only a couple bucks. Women's sports is absolutely the future of the monetization model of sports business. And there's a couple of reasons why. I'd like to cite Angel City just as a really good example, because they've been working, really hard for about a year since they launched, and they've been doing a really good job. But they launched this community-based sponsorship model where, they take a certain percentage of all their sponsorship deals and put it back into the community in Los Angeles with all their corporate partners. And that, is really the first time we've seen it on like consistent, this is the way we do business scale. Of course, that was probably a component of a lot of sponsorship deals, but never really have we seen it from a property to say, this is the only way we're doing business, which was great. So, I looked at, okay, it's women's sports. I want to be in women's sports. I want to contribute to the growth of women in sport and women's sports alike. It did not hurt that the team president is Jill Ellis. If you follow women's soccer at all, she is absolutely legendary. She was the head coach for the U.S. women's national team, won 2 World Cups with them, only coach to do so, and just has a legacy of creating winning cultures everywhere she goes. So it's important to me to work for a strong leader and somebody who I could trust and somebody I honestly wanted to work for. And then the rest of the crew that they put together was just really impressive, So I took a look at all of those things, and I did one of another professor in the UAF program, Travis Meisner, also a really good friend of mine. And he's on my little like personal board of directors. If you don't have that yet, start to think about that. You have 5 maybe people that you bounce things off of. And he's one of mine. We've been friends since grad school. We went through grad school together, and he sent me this. If you've ever had a class with Travis, he's very organized. So he sent me this whole spreadsheet on how you evaluate opportunities, right? So I put in all these variables that were important to me. Quality of life, career trajectory, building something from the ground up. How does that weigh against working for a global brand, right? And so I was able to kind of quantify the opportunity because I was really torn. I had a trajectory at the Cowboys, but this was a elevated role, higher compensation in a market that I'd probably honestly like a little bit better for my life. It's at the beach. How could you not? And it, I had a feeling it was going to come out, San Diego was going to come out on top. And then when I quantified it, it did. So it just kind of stars aligned a little bit that this is the right move for me. I'd been at the Cowboys for 4 seasons. And I'm so grateful for that. I learned so much. But to be able to work for a really strong leader as well, who wants to create a winning organization on and off the field, was really important to me. I think a risk going into this is a very calculated risk, right? It's a startup team. It could fold. It could. It's not going to, but it's a possibility, right? And it was important to me that I went to a team where sponsorship was important. Because the last thing I'd want to do is spend my time, trying to close deals and bring on sponsors, and all the team cares about is if we win, we're good, which that never hurts. It's always easier when you win, but you also want to make sure that the revenue generation piece is important. And that was really clear from my conversations with leadership as well. So really just checked a lot of boxes, and the opportunity to start a franchise doesn't come along very often. So that was a really big selling point to me as well.
That all makes sense. And I think an important message to students is, so I worked for a team that failed, right? The New Mexico Thunderbirds that sold to the Canton Charge, right? The beginnings of the D League, and the biggest, I was 24 years old as a director of business management, and in my head was like, oh, if this team fails, what will happen? And that was the best experience that you could possibly have. But I don't see women's soccer failing based on how successful it is right now. And I agree with you that it is not, in my mind, I would be way more surprised if it didn't succeed, I guess is what I'm getting at. But with the new job, I know you're still in Dallas. Like, talk to us about your day to day. I think you're what, 2 or 3 weeks into the new role. Like, what's your
yes, still in Dallas. So I don't need to relocate because we don't have offices yet. Life of a startup. So hopefully we'll have those January or February, and then I'll go ahead and relocate and market. So really day to day is getting organized, because I don't have a salesperson yet, right? So it's me, and then the chief revenue officer, then the president. And so what I'm trying to do is build a really solid infrastructure right now. Also having sponsorship conversations, trying to sell big deals, so we have something to kick off, but then also build that really solid infrastructure for when that salesperson does come on, they can just go, right? Like they can learn the market, they can have conversations. Our sales deck is ready. We have revenue report templates. We have prospecting templates. We have a CRM system. And then eventually I'll bring on an activation person who will then be able to activate all those deals, and then building an infrastructure for them. What's our plan for recaps? Here are all of our assets that we can sell. Start to learn these. Here are the assets and the deals we have sold. These are the people you need to talk to. So really just setting up that solid foundation right now. A lot of Zoom calls. Well, we're on Teams, so a lot of Teams calls because everyone's remote. So it's really our only way to communicate. I am not a huge fan of working from home, which is probably the opposite of a lot of people now. I don't mind hybrid. Like we'll have a hybrid go into the office where it's, like 3 days in, 2 days out. I just love to be around our team and be in person. And I think it's just a little bit more efficient. But everyone's different. That's just me personally. So, but I'm definitely taking advantage of the time. I had to hang out with my 2 dogs all day, so that's exciting. One of which might just enter this session any moment. You never really can tell. So that's been really great. And then just really building all of our, even like from our SharePoint folder, like what folders we have, what's our shared site like. And then working with the small team that we have, it's growing by the day. So it's definitely exciting still, even if we're remote.
That completely makes sense. And I think I enjoy like the split between in person and remote, but the remote aspect I think would be hard if I was working for a sports property, because it's exciting. Like the culture is so, not that high isn't, but being around a team is super exciting. To keep on with the general partnership questions, we had a lot of great questions from students early on. What are the most innovative ideas that you've seen in corporate partnership, and like maybe over even the last couple of years, because we've had such a lot of turmoil? So
I would probably say that community-based sponsorship model that I referenced earlier with Angel City, just as a consistent sponsorship model. I was just reading called the fan project, and it breaks down women's sports. You can download it online. I'll see if I can find the link and send it to Peggy, but it's really, really great insight. And it breaks down all the the fan behaviors and insights of people who are fans of women's sports, which is obviously really important to the story that I go tell to prospects, right, and brands to try and get them on board. But the biggest thing was that this community-based sponsorship model is going to be the future of sponsorships. There are a few reasons why. Brands are really smart. They used to not have the same access to data analytics, nor did they really care. It was a lot of how many times did my signage rotate in stadium, or how many clicks did this link get? But it's getting more intentional with how brands need to justify dollars spent, right? So a brand can't go spend $2 million on X, Y, and Z sponsorship without some philanthropic tie anymore. It's just not going to happen. They're going to get destroyed internally or externally, just optically. So brands are a lot more cognizant of that. And from my perspective in the position I'm in, if there's a community-based model within whatever we're selling, that gives me two budgets to pull from on the brand side, right? You have the advertising budget, the marketing budget, and then there's probably a community budget that they can dip into. And hopefully we get to generate a little bit more revenue because we have community-based programs in there. So I've really enjoyed seeing that grow and catch on within the entire industry. It's not just women's sports that's doing it. We're seeing it everywhere. So I really enjoyed that. And then the other piece, if you haven't seen this yet, check it out online. It's called the Miller Lighthouse, and it's at AT&T Stadium, and that's where the Cowboys play. And they have like revolutionized this outdoor plaza area. Something that I've never seen in professional sports, let alone the NFL, is that they're doing $5 beers all game at the Miller Light Plaza. It sounds like something really small, but it's a big deal to get. It was a big deal to get our F&B director on board with that. But the reason why they're doing it is to create this tailgating culture on stadium property and drive traffic there, right? Instead of don't go hang out in the parking lot, come drink with us for $5. And we're going to have all this programming out there. So it has its own game day script, like the same as you would for in-game. The DCC, the cheerleaders go out there, the drum line goes out there. There's somebody that we've created this group of people that lead all the fans in the stadium, very soccer culture-y, by the way, for that, every single game. So it's really, really cool the way they've done it. And that was a part of a major renewal with Miller Lite, and they wanted to see something different. And that's exactly what the Cowboys did. So I'd go look at that as just a really great example of an ownable space at the stadium, with very, very intentional aspects to it to drive traffic and keep fans engaged.
That's a really great example. And you hit on corporate social responsibility before that. That's not going away in sports or any business. Like our generations and the world today want to hold big corporations responsible, and that's you're seeing that time in sports, that leads into our next question of what are some of the challenges you faced when creating and maintaining corporate sponsors. Talk to us about maybe some of the challenges that you've faced in the past, and maybe some that you see in the future too. So.
COVID was a huge one. I think that that kind of goes assumed, but COVID was the worst and the best thing to happen to, I think, our partnerships, business IQ and experience, right? So when you're at the Cowboys, I'm going to go back to my Cowboys days because that's when COVID was. We're very fortunate that we didn't have to have the highest frequency of difficult conversations, right? We were always everybody's biggest spend because we're the Cowboys, and people knew that. And we knew the value of the star and that there was going to be a premium on sponsorships, right? So you'd get the conversation every now and then of like, oh, I spend 10x with you than I do with this team. It's like, well, we're 10x as valuable. So yeah, that checks out. But those conversations during COVID were particularly difficult. And I think what it did was humanize our business a little bit more. Sometimes we can get stuck in, oh, it's just like corporate money, just cut the check. What's the big deal? But really behind that check is like 4 or 5 people that need to justify their jobs by making good decisions with corporate dollars, right? Because that comes from their bottom line, essentially. So when all of these people that you're dealing with are in almost like survival mode, right? Because jobs are getting cut, salaries are getting cut. So then they're like, hey, go find money. Like, we need to cut spending somewhere. And they come to you and they're like, hey, we'd like to cut our spend down. And we say no. That's a tough conversation, right? Not every team was able to do that either. Some teams cut checks for refunds, but that's just not something we were going to do. So it was a good lesson in having difficult conversations and being empathetic, and just being like real, right? And transparent. Nobody at the calls that I was on were like really gonna make the decision of like, hey, we're gonna give you a refund or we're not. It just wasn't our philosophy when we were approaching COVID. The other piece is that it showed the importance of relationship building. So something we're really proud of at the Cowboys when I was there, and they still do this, obviously, but we harp so much on the importance of relationships, right? Almost to the point of nauseum, and it's like, this is really important. It's really important. We go above and beyond for everybody, for every sponsor. And, sometimes you get to the point where like, why do we do this? Right. And it paid off in COVID because we were able to tap into all of those relationship deposits we made, and how flexible we were and how much we over delivered and exceeded expectations to say, hey, we've been providing like so much more value than we ever needed to. Like, this is a true partnership. When we provide more value, we don't go back and ask you for more money, right? No. So when this is happening and we can't help that our stadium is at 80% or whatever it was, it's not in our DNA to say, oh yeah, then we'll cut you 20% check back. We don't live within the 4 corners of the contract, right? So that's just a little bit of our shared DNA that we look for in partners too, which there was no way to know that, right, before COVID hit. And, we were just really pleased with how our partners leaned in. And, of course, we leaned in other ways that we could, like providing future value and, committing to more assets. We weren't just like, oh, nope, sorry. We really tried to creatively problem solve, because we believed we could, instead of just saying, oh yeah, we'll cut your check. That's easy, right? But the tough thing to do would be to creatively provide value, for the rest of the term of some of these deals. So that was a huge challenge, but it really, really sharpened, I think, our team's skills in creative problem solving and relationship building. Sometimes when you go through that stuff, it makes it a lot harder to break up with corporate partnerships, right? When you go through that together and you try and make people look good as much as you can on the brand side, who's justifying the spend. So that was a really big one. But then, your traditional hurdles outside of COVID that you see is like real ROI, which is return on investment, right? So if you're paying $1 million, you probably hope to get 2-3x that in value. So it's just understanding. It's really important to understand and ask the right questions on how brands measure value. So if I'm talking to a brand and all they care about is awareness, then I know that we need to curate a program that we can track real value on, right? So what were the engagements and impressions on content that featured your logo? Can we bonus them signage rotations? How many eyeballs are at every game? And, when I was with the Cowboys, TV was huge, right? TV, obviously not as huge in the NWSL. With the Cowboys, it was the premier and most valued asset we had, because we were getting a huge audience every single time we were on TV, especially now that we're actually good. So just understanding what brands value, how they measure it, and not being afraid to ask that question, right? somebody's like, oh, brand awareness is really important. It's like, you know what, tell me more about that. How would you guys measure that? Is it impressions? Is it engagements? Do you have a system internally that you track and measure with your other partnerships? Because a lot of the time they don't know. And it's a good question to ask. So then you set yourself up for success moving forward. Future hurdles, I think, will be a little bit of the same. You know, what does ROI look like moving forward, right? Where we love this community-based model, but how do we measure the success of it? How do we measure the value of it? Is it overall sentiment? You know, when we go on social, we measure the sentiment of a brand before they were our partner, and then afterwards, you know, maybe it's that, or maybe it's just showing, you know, that they're cutting a check to invest back into the community where their headquarters is. So it's really just the ROI piece is really, really important to fine tune on the front end, just so you can, you know, make sure you're delivering, because objection stated is much more powerful than objection assumed, right? So you don't want to get to recap season and a partner be like, yeah, this awareness is great, but I really wanted to convert into purchases or whatever it might be. And you're like, oh gosh, I had no idea. I should have asked, or they should have told me, right? Because that's your gut reaction is, well, why didn't you tell me? It's like, well, we should have asked. So I think that fine tuning the ROI piece, especially in the community-based model, is going to be a future hurdle, especially because it's so hot right now. I don't know that anyone has that golden ticket on the ROI in that piece.
To switch gears here a little bit to talk about the league, do you envision? Tell us a little bit about the league. I know the league's been around almost 10 years, right? Or has it been 10 years?
Almost 10 years.
Yep. Talk to us about like the league. Is it just domestic? Are there international teams as well? Is there international expansion? Are you looking for, you know, domestic and international partners? I guess talk to us a little bit about that. Do you see it going global, or is it already global?
Yeah, it's a good question. So NWSL is just domestic league right now, 12 teams, including the expansion teams in San Diego and LA. And I would say international global audience reach, yes, because we are the premier destination for the top talent for women's soccer in the world. So you have players like Sam Kerr, who's an outstanding player for Australia. She wants to come play here. Which a lot of the time, you know, that happens, it's the reverse, right? The men want to go play in Europe in Premier League, but the women want to come play here. So that's a really nice feather in our cap, especially when it comes to, you know, spikes with the World Cup and the Olympics, you know, and that's on the world stage quite literally. It generates a lot of interest in the players, which is really great. And as far as like targeting for sponsorship, you know, we're governed by two laws really, and that's you know, state law, which is California state law, and NWSL law. And NWSL law says that we can't go to Mexico, right? We can't go international with rights. The NWSL has broadcast rights internationally with Twitch. But it's something that, you know, I am looking forward to talking with the league on, right? San Diego is almost Tijuana. So it's like, we probably have a lot of fans in Mexico that we want to engage with. So, you know, that's something that the NFL is like only talking about right now. So I think we have a few years before the NWSL gets there. But that's why I'm excited to join the league, is because there's so much opportunity, especially coming from the NFL. We've seen how they handle opening up of categories, international expansion. And it's something that the NWSL probably honestly needs to consider. Considering international talent, you know, comes here aside from broadcast rights and Twitch. Like, why aren't we playing any international games? We should be, you know, like the NFL and the MLB play. So I think it's all to come. To be perfectly honest, like the NWSL is lean, you know, it's a small group of people, and we can't grow as fast as we want to. But that's why I'm excited to be here, because, you know, as a team, I get to push the league to be like, hey, we want to do this in a very constructive way. We love the league, you know, we have a great relationship with them, but it's like, hey, we want to do this. What do you think? And if they're like, hey, you know, I think we're just too small. And, you know, then you get with all the other teams, you're like, hey, this would benefit us all. And this is why. And that's how these things come to fruition, especially with international expansion. And there's nothing precluding us from partnering with an international brand, right? Especially when it comes to like crypto, fan tokens, things like that. A lot of those brands are headquartered outside of the US. So we're absolutely allowed to do that. And hopefully we will, because obviously that's a hot category. But, you know, a challenge for us is that we don't own our stadium. I don't think any NWSL team owns their stadium. So we're a tenant. So we can really only do so much with categories that are integrated into our stadium, like F&B or payment systems, ATMs, things like that.
That makes sense. And talking about like growth and international expansion, like where do you see the, you know, your position in 5 to 10 years, and also where do you see the league in five to 10 years? I guess give us your projection, because then we'll come back in 5 to 10 years and ask you and say like Michelle was either right or wrong. So
hopefully I'm right. But honestly, this league is going to just keep growing, and it's going to grow fast. You know, I think the expansion fees are going to increase once people realize the value of a women's sports team and a property. And it's going to continue to be the #1 women's soccer league in the world. There's no doubt about it. You know, there's another league that just launched or announced, I think it was like a USL women's league. And that's great, you know, for the talent that's going to go to that league. But the #1 talent is going to continuously be in the NWSL. And our global audience is just going to grow. You know, like I mentioned, we're going to start playing. I mean, I have no information that says this, but my gut says we are going to start playing international friendlies, right? Where San Diego Wave FC and Angel City FC go play in London. Things like that, where we can really capitalize on the global audience. And I think international expansion is probably 5 years away, maybe 5 to 7. But I think that's the next step really for the league, because we have so much international talent. That's the best place to go. That's going to create monetization opportunities for the league and the club.
absolutely. And what about your position? Like, do you see, you know, what do you see in 5 to 10 years? Do you, you know, see the NWSL like size or like the front office size similar to that of, I guess talk about that. I was going to compare it to another league, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I would say the front office for the league, the NWSL, will probably be similar to like the WNBA, because the WNBA has like NBA money behind it, right? So they're naturally a little bit bigger, can do a little bit more things. So I think we're going to get there. And I think that's great. You know, if we can get to that spot, we're in good shape. You know, my role in particular, like I have an idea of my personal trajectory. Hopefully in 5 to 10 years, probably closer to 10, I'll be the president of some women's soccer team somewhere in the NWSL, hopefully at San Diego. I love working for the club so far. But I think our team is already growing a ton. And you know, we are trying to be like an accordion, right? When we don't have a lot of needs right now, in the respect of like, we don't have a lot of partners for right now, because we're talking to partners, we're not signed anyone yet. So, but when our partners grow, we're going to grow quite a bit. So I think we're going to grow as much as we need to. I think there's going to continue to be real money coming into the league. You know, you see people buying up teams, like Ron Burkle is the owner of San Diego Wave FC. He's also an owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So now there's ownership. There are all these variables that are happening. You're getting front office staff from experienced leagues. You know, the NWSL used to be like, yeah, if you want to work in sports, like, and you've never worked in sports before, sure, go work there. But now it's, hey, this is a business. Like, you know, we're not here to mess around. Like, we're really going to grow this. And then you're getting ownership from other big leagues that know how these other big leagues function, and they want to make more money, right? So your front office staff that has experience want to make more money. Owners that have experience from major leagues want to make more money. And you're getting all of this talent, and the women's sports talent pipeline is growing 6 times that of the men's sports pipeline. So we're only going to get more women's soccer talent. And so with all these variables happening, there's no way this league doesn't grow. They're just not possible. So corporate partnerships in general is going to keep growing, because right now, again, it's like buying Bitcoin when it was a couple bucks. So now when it gets to X dollars in valuation, more brands are going to keep coming in.
That makes a ton of sense. And yeah, I tend to agree, especially with women's soccer, that the growth will be there and it'll be exponential and quick. It'll continue to grow.
And we get these natural spikes with women's soccer, right? With World Cup and Summer Olympics that offset each other usually. So it's a nice spike in awareness on a consistent basis that we can count on. Also, you know, Jill is very involved in FIFA. So like that also helps, you know, the global stage, especially for our club. So it's going to be fun to watch it grow.
Absolutely. Completely switching gears here. We have three kind of general questions about your advice and also like work-life balance stuff. So what are some tips? I know you're really good at this, or Travis always praises you for this. What are some tips for maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
I'm surprised that he praises me for that. Honestly, I'm going to have to call him later if he's not on this. You know, it's hard. It's really hard. I won't lie to you guys, especially when you love what you do and you love who you work with. You know, it's easy. It's easy to stay at the office till 9 o'clock at night and order dinner and keep working on a deck. And don't get me wrong, there are times where, you know, that happens and you're up against tight timelines. And, you know, I've been very, very fortunate that everyone I've worked with has kind of been like a little family. So it doesn't really feel like you're working, right? You're like, oh, like I'm with my friends, my family. But it is so important to draw boundaries. And I've learned it the hard way a little bit. You know, when I first started with the Cowboys, really when you start anywhere with a new job, I'm like, okay, I got to go to every happy hour. And I just got to make friends with everybody because I'm infiltrating a team and I got to get to know my team. And if I want to be successful, here's what I need to do, which of course you need to do a little bit of that in the beginning. But it feels really nice sometimes to just put your phone down and not answer emails on the weekends. So what I've started to ask myself is like, can this really not wait till Monday? And what I've always appreciated is when I've had leadership that set very clear expectations, right? So I was just on a call, you know, not too long before this, and our CRO said, hey, we're on a really tight timeline with this. Anyone who is involved with approvals on this, I'm sorry, but I need you this weekend. I need you to be on this weekend. So I always appreciate that because that means the normal is you're off. Right? Like, so when somebody's like, hey, I need you to be on this weekend, it's different than just feeling like you have to. You know, I had a boss who'd email at 4:15 in the morning. Not an exaggeration. Just because he did that, I needed to check myself and be like, okay, if he wants to do that, that doesn't mean I need to answer at 4:30. You know, I can answer when I get to work at 7:30 and it'll be fine. So I think, you know, the clear communication is huge, and don't be afraid to ask for that too. You know, I always set the expectation of myself that I had to be at everything and be the first one to the office, last one to leave. And then I found myself just kind of sitting there, not having anything to do, but just to be the last one to leave. That makes no sense. It's silly. It was a waste of time. So I think the setting the boundaries was huge. And, you know, you learn as you go along, what works for you and what works for your family, and how you can identify those times that, you know, you make a commitment to yourself and the important people in your life. Like, okay, I am going to be home for dinner at least 3 days a week. I will not be later than dinner, you know, and just making sure you have that communication, especially if you're in a relationship. It's very, very important to do that because sports is really easy to get caught up in. I think more than a lot of other industries because it's not 9 to 5. And everybody knows that. But as if you can make it, you know, at least work with, you know, the rest of your life, it's very, very important.
I think I used to teach org behavior, and I forget what it's called, but yeah, there's a certain point for productivity, this hour point that you meet. Once you meet it, like once you exceed that, your productivity goes down significantly. And
Oh yeah.
as I've gotten older, like I've figured that out as well. Like if I sit down for an hour and answer emails all at once instead of throughout the day, or checking them throughout, it's you figure that out of what works for you, I guess, as you get
Oh yeah.
here.
And there's
So
like, it's like evolving those tactics, right? Like the way I did it when I was, I don't know, 24 and in my first job, so different than the way I do it now. Like I am so guilty of living and dying by my calendar. If something's on my calendar, I'm going to do it, which is like kind of scary, but kind of good at the same time. But so I've learned that the most effective way for me to do something is block it off on my calendar and just put like, get your inbox to 0, and I'll do it. As long as it's there and it's visual, I can see it and it's already predetermined. Nobody can like capitalize on that time but me. Is really great. Microsoft also does this really great thing where it automatically blocks out focus time on your calendar, depending on what your schedule is. And then it'll send you a report of how you did. Like, did you schedule meetings over your focus time? Or were you able to capitalize on all your focus time all this week? Or you did it 2 out of 5 days. So that's been really helpful. But the calendar piece has been huge for me personally.
Totally. Yeah, totally makes sense. And I actually do that too when I need to focus on something. Maybe it's, yeah, if I'm gonna train for something, it's like, okay, this is the block of time for it. Otherwise, it's like, well, maybe not today, but tomorrow, kind of thing. So we have 2 more questions, and if students or attendees, if you have questions, just drop them into the chat and we'll get to them in a few minutes here. But what do you think helped you be in the position you are in today, and what skills should folks that want to get to where you're at or break into the corporate partnership realm, what skills do you think they need?
Yeah, I'll allude to a little bit of what I touched on before, and that's just maintaining my network. Without that, I absolutely wouldn't have this job. Would I have been qualified for it? I mean, probably, but without the network, I wouldn't have been at the Cowboys, right? So, every job I've gotten has been through a referral or a person or a network. I didn't apply to this job. I didn't apply to the Cowboys. It's been, I don't say that in like a overly confident way. I say it in a way that hopefully, shows the importance of your network. Right. And the biggest thing that I did for me, because I knew this next role that I took out of the Cowboys was going to be like, hopefully like an 8 to 10 year role. Right. I was at Ganassi for 3 years. I was at Cowboys for 4. And this next role, when you get to I feel like when I'm at the senior director level, now I really want to grow where I'm at, right? VP, SVP, EVP, whatever it might be. And that takes some time. So I knew going into this, okay, I want this to be the right stop for me because I want to stay wherever I am, because I've been moving around and we need to plant some roots and I want to stay. So I really took a look at like everything I was doing. As what do I love about my job? What do I not love about my job? What are the areas I really want to be exacerbated in this next role? So I love partnership strategy. I don't really even like partnership marketing. I mean, I do, but I didn't love it. And that's what I did before this, right? I didn't love doing ticket requests. I didn't love trafficking signage. I didn't love recaps, but I loved having the conversations with partners about their key objectives and how we can help solve their business issues. So I probably honestly was more primed for a sales role than partnership marketing, but I wanted to sell more. And this was the opportunity to do that. So without kind of talking to my personal board of directors, right, on, well, this is what I like, this is what I don't see jobs like this is what I want to do. What that does is not only help you figure out what your next step is, but it brands you as somebody that wants to do those things. So when an opportunity came up here, I got a text from the CRO of Angel City FC, said, hey, would you be interested in this? It sounds like what we've been talking about. And that's how this came to fruition, because I made sure I let my network in on what I was thinking. and not just using them to say, hey, there's a job open at San Diego franchise. Do you know anybody there? They thought of me instead. So that has been so integral to my career. And I owe so many people so many thank yous. It's unbelievable, because I wouldn't be here without any of them. And I definitely wouldn't have grown as fast, because, the job at the Cowboys was pivotal for me as well. Having the Cowboys on your resume is always helpful, but, I got the opportunity to work on some really big things. And that's what prepped me for this, right? So it's knowing the right stops and when are the right stops. I knew it was my time to leave Ganassi. I was kind of plateauing, I got offered a great promotion there, but I didn't want to stay in racing. I knew I wanted to do something different and something more. And then what better place to do it than the Cowboys, right? They're the most valued franchise in sports. They know how to generate revenue. I can learn a lot. They have a diverse business portfolio. And now I get to really take what I learned there and what I learned at Ganassi and apply it to a startup. So the relationship building, but more importantly, the maintaining is so crucial to my career. The other piece is just like, I've always found success of just like being genuine. Like, who you guys get here is who my coworker gets on my calls, who my CRO gets, who Jill Ellis gets, who I never thought I'd be on a call with. It's just, the genuine nature of how you interact with people can see through it if it's not. And that's really, really important, because there's so much BS, let's say, out there, and it's easy to see through. So when you come across somebody genuine, you get to build a really, really authentic relationship. And it's just better for everybody. It's good business nowadays, because I think people don't expect it as much anymore. And so when they come across somebody genuine, that has like a genuine passion and interest for what they want to do, it's just really important. The other piece is that, and this is a little bit more tactical, but it's still very, very important, learn how to quantify your experience. So for instance, I'm hiring a salesperson right now, and I've had a bunch of conversations, and this one girl, she's been in event sales. So it's not corporate partnerships, but she was really impressive, and I wanted to keep talking to her, and I knew she wanted to get into corporate partnerships. So I knew how important this was. And what she did was she was able to quantify and put a number on what she did in her event sales role and how she thinks those skills could translate to corporate partnerships. And she went so far as to create a spreadsheet of all her key contacts at brands in San Diego. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of won over here, and I like to think I'm a pretty hard interviewer. I have high expectations for people. And when she did that, I was just really impressed, because she clearly went above and beyond without me asking her to. So what that shows me, one, is she has a lot of interest in the role. Two, she's a self-starter. I'm not going to have to babysit her and ask her to do things if she's on our team. Three, she wants to succeed. She's a competitive person. And those are three things that I love for somebody in a corporate partnership sales role for this startup club. So being able to showcase, one, how you can quantify your experience and translate it, and two, go above and beyond to differentiate yourself, is really, really important, especially when, you're looking to make a change or get into the sports industry for the first time. And then it just builds confidence in yourself, with you, and then with other people that you could be working with.
You hit on a really important part of essentially authenticity, right? With being genuine, and that's I think it's true in marketing, and it is like what Michelle's essentially talking about is individual or personal branding, right? Like, consumers see through that now, and that consumer might be a corporate partner, it might be a fellow employee, but those basic marketing principles also carry over to your own personal brand, and you want that to be, the authenticity will never go out of style. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be the same as somebody else, but that there's a level of consistency there is really, really important. So what advice do you have for somebody that wants to go into your industry, or like a role like yours? I know you give a little bit there, but any general advice or kind of last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would say don't get caught up on titles and don't pigeonhole yourself, because especially if it's an entry level role, that looks different everywhere. Sometimes you'll see specialists, sometimes you'll see account executive, sometimes you'll see an entry level role as a manager. It just depends where you are. And then, I was always afraid of this, so I feel like I need to mention it. Like, don't be afraid of internships. Internships are so great. Paid internships are great. Just from my perspective, I'll have an intern in our department, and my goal is to hire a really great intern so I don't have to train a person that I can hire on full time, and it expedites the process. That is probably every person's goal who has an intern, because then you're really getting a good intro person, right? That when you hire somebody on full time, you have to dedicate all this training to. If you hire an intern, they've already been around your department for a year. They already have that training. It's endemic to their experience. So then they know you, they know your brand, they know the way your department works, and it's an asset. It becomes a huge asset. So I would say don't be afraid of those. I know they're hard to swallow sometimes, but they're really, really beneficial. And like I said before, don't pigeonhole yourself, because if I pigeonholed myself to not work in NASCAR for some sort of like mythical pride that I had to not work in NASCAR, that would have made no sense. And I absolutely would not be here. Because again, every job I've gotten is for connections that I've made at the places before and from my graduate program. So just make sure you maintain that network. And for you guys are in a prime position as students. Use LinkedIn and ask for informational interviews. I just got one the other day from a grad student at University of San Diego. And of course I'm going to take it. Because so many people took mine, right? Just ask for 15 minutes, 30 minutes. People want to help. People want to help you guys. So go on LinkedIn, search for people in corporate partnerships or whatever industry you want to be in, whatever vertical, and just reach out to them on message and ask for an informational interview. The other piece, Peggy, you mentioned personal brand. Use Twitter. Use Twitter to, identify yourself as, sustainability expert in sport, whatever it might be, like that you're interested in. Put it in your little bio, and then start to tweet about it, retweet about it. And then no matter who comes across you on Twitter, whether they come across you on Twitter, on in person, introduction, LinkedIn, it's consistent messaging. And it just shows you the authenticity of who you are. So I would say leverage all of those things.
I think that's really great advice. And I too echo the keep your options open and keep your mind open to jobs. I know my second job in what I would call third after coaching college basketball was a sales role. And I viewed that job as I didn't even want to interview for it. But I don't want to be a national sales manager. No way, no how. I'm not a salesperson. And it ended up that was the majority of my career was sales and marketing after that. And it blew up my network. And it was relationship building, which I found I was I really like relationship building and problem solving, like Michelle said. And so I would say keep an open mind as well. And if there's, we have time for maybe one question. We've got about 2 minutes. If anybody has a question, throw it in the chat now or forever hold your peace, I guess. So.
Well, you guys know the drill if you've been on here before, but connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email, whatever y'all need. If you don't have a LinkedIn, make one today because they're so important. But keep in touch. If I can ever be of help to anybody, we're all a part of the same UIF family here. So you guys have me as a resource at your disposal. So whatever you need, reach out to me or Peggy. And if you have any questions after this, I'm happy to engage outside of this forum. So just let me know.
We've also got a lot of Montclair State students in the class today, or in the
all right.
In the chat today too. So you've got some New Jersey folks.
I love it. Hey, that's my roots, the Northeast.
Yeah. I figured I'd throw that out there.
We played Montclair in lacrosse when I was in college. We beat you guys, but it's okay.
Perfect.
I had to just throw that in there. It was a big game for us, okay?
Nice, nice. Well, thank you to everybody, and especially thank you to Michelle for taking the time, and congrats on the new position. We're all
Thank you.
super proud of you and what you're doing. So thanks to all of our students and faculty and staff and community folks that are on the call too. So cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you all.
Thank you, Michelle.
See ya.